Okay, good morning and welcome to this ordinary meeting of the Nelson Tasman Regional Landfill Business Unit, hereafter NTRLBU, Friday 15 July. I'd like to welcome everyone along, and Andrew, would you like to open with a karakia? Thank you so much, and get you to turn your mic on so those on Zoom can hear us.
Kia ora koutou. Inga mati o te motu e Richard Bradley, airi atu rā, rātou kia rātou, tātou kia tātou, te ai mauri ora. Mena tātou, wakataka te au ki te uru, wakataka te au ki te tonga, kia mākina kina ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai, kia i, atakura, e tio, e uka, e au, te hei mauri ora. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Andrew.
This is going to keep going round and round. Just turn it off when it comes around.
Just noting, Councillor Bryant, you're not on mute, so your conversation is being live streamed. Great. Okay, so we have everyone present with us this morning, either on Zoom or in person. There is, well, order of businesses as per the agenda. If anyone has any items of interest, I'll just get you to, we have no decision-making items, so you can just update your interest register for respective council if you do. We also have no public forum. Now, Chair's report isn't listed on the agenda, so I guess me speaking is still part of the welcome and not part of the Chair's report, since there isn't one. So I'd just like to, so as you may be aware, we had a discussion after our last meeting that Andrew Stevens' term as our iwi representative was coming to an end. Nelson City Council reappointed Andrew at our council meeting on the 12th of July, and Tasman District Council are going to do a retrospective reappointment at their meeting in August. So it's my absolute delight to have Andrew continue around the table. Really appreciate you being prepared and willing and creating the availability in what I know is already pretty busy schedule to continue to join us here. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Judine. I'd like to say it'd be nice to keep going forward in a positive manner and having you stay behind and chairing this arena. So hopefully you can change your mind. Kia ora.
Yeah, so for those on Zoom who aren't aware, I have put out a media release today announcing that I wouldn't be restanding for council. So that was Andrew's reference. So yeah, so it's good to have the continuity of you, Andrew, even if not of the chair. So thank you for your comments, though. Okay, we'll now go to the confirmation of minutes of 27 May. They're on pages 5 to 8 of the agenda. Do I have someone who's happy to move them? So it's been moved by Mel and seconded by Stuart. All those in favour will just raise hands. Great, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we will now go to the General Manager's Update Report, page 9. I'll hand over to you. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. Through the chair, may I take it, report as read? So in summary, things are going quite well at the landfill. There's been a lot of activities still going on. The wet weather has slowed down some of the airspace and buttress works, but we are still carrying on at the present time. We're expecting potentially to stop some of that works over the near future because of the increasing costs due to rain delays. There's been no significant safety incidents on the landfill over the last, or the period since the last report. We have implemented some small changes in the way we handle the tailgates of the trucks, and that seems to have improved the ability to get staff out of the way of the potential for debris falling out of the trucks, which is good. So, overall, in that respect, it's been going well. The new stormwater system has been tested and it's been found to achieve what it's need to do. We've had a couple of reasonably sized rain events and rain periods, and we have been fully compliant with the consent during those times, which is very nice. So I'm comfortable that we're getting towards the end of our issues with stormwater management on the site. In terms of other things on the site, we've been looking into, we obviously bought and redid up the compactor. The current primary compactor is still having issues, so it's been out now of service the last 2 weeks. So our refurbished compactor is now being used. So the contractor is actually paying us to run in our machine, which is quite nice. So that's quite good. In terms of gas management, there's quite a lot of activity underway, but we're unfortunately the drilling contractor had some staff go out with COVID and some resignations in his business, so he hasn't actually managed to get to site yet. So we're hoping that he'll be on site in September to start drilling the gas wells. Despite that, I think we're reasonably on track for maintaining our UEF at the same sort of level as last year. Maybe we might get slightly better. It's always really hard for me to tell. But in regard to gas management, the Eves Valley landfill, we've now got in the gas flow meter and the gas analyzer, so we now know that it's doing around 140 cubic meters an hour of gas at around 65% methane, which is giving us a significant reduction in carbon emissions. Slightly less than I talked about previously, which I think I said it might have been 165 cubic meters an hour, but it's still a fantastic result for us in terms of the overall emission reduction. So from that's great. We also have been working with Pioneer Energy, and that in regard to looking at the gas management in the future, and that project that we're looking at there is pretty much agreed, and we'll be looking to settle at the end of August for that project. So in terms of the other stuff, the airspace and leachate works, we have already moved around about 60,000 cubic meters of material from the back of the landfill. We put it into stockpile for the buttress at the bottom of the landfill, so there's a significant amount of that work has been undertaken. But as I said before, it'll slow down at the moment over the middle of winter. But we do have a contractor coming in early September, we hope, when the weather starts to get a bit drier and finer, to start the upper buttress levels, which will then, once we get the upper buttress, which is 20,000 tonnes of material on the upper buttress, that will allow us to then remove the setback at the front of the landfill space and then allow us to use that airspace at the top of the landfill. So that's something we're really working hard to get to. At the present time, we're still constrained by the stability and the setback. So this year we won't be valuing for a lot more airspace. There's only about 40 or 50,000 cubic meters of extra airspace, and next year we'll be able to actually value up a lot more airspace from those works. They'll actually come in. So we haven't, and from a valuation perspective, we haven't made the gains yet there. We've also been undertaking a review of the deed of agreement in terms of reference, which wasn't able to get onto the board report for this agenda. It'll be on the September 9th agenda. But that basically looks at streamlining some of the board activities and the reporting frameworks and the likes. But that'll be discussed in detail on the 9th of September meeting. There was one disappointing aspect, I guess, during the period. We did have one neighbour contact NTRW in regard to an odour concern from the landfill. We have implemented odour things, routine assessments of the area. I personally have been doing them as well, just to try and make sure that I'm comfortable that we aren't having odour. I have personally not smelt the landfill outside the boundary of the landfill, so I need to dig into this further. I know that there have been anecdotal discussion with others in the past that there have been odour events. So we need to figure out and keep on top of that, because the last thing we want to do is to start getting being a bad neighbour to our. That's not something we're keen on. So putting a lot of effort now into seeing what we can do. We do expect that if there is an odour, that it will improve when we get our new gas wells on, because we'll be able to suck out a lot more gas and therefore not have any, reduce the amount of gas escaping from the landfill. From a financial perspective, the landfill has obviously been running in surplus due to the large amount of waste coming in. This year we got 81,000 tonnes, which is up from 78,000 tonnes last year. And also because of the lower UEF that we've managed to achieve. So those are the two things that have substantively driven the increase in profit or surplus. That surplus has also resulted, that extra landfill volume has resulted in extra costs. So there's obviously increased costs when you look at the balance sheet or the finances, but overall we've resulted in a significant surplus. What else is there? Let's see. One of the things we've been talking to Pioneer Energy about is the Pioneer Energy system has carbon credits generated from historically, and half of those credits are owned by a Nelson Tasman Regional Landfill Business Unit. So we're looking to try to finalise that. They tend to, because they're not, we don't know about them, they're in the Pioneer Energy books. We don't tend to see them, so we're trying to resolve that. And I've indicated to Pioneer that we would be interested in purchasing their share of those carbon credits. However, that's something that the board would have to ratify, because we are still currently have enough credits to meet our position. So that's something we'll have to consider. It would be a separate transaction to any other transaction we do with Pioneer. We've been looking at what the future holds for landfilling in the region as part of our ongoing work for resource consenting. And one of the things that, we're obviously looking at, should we stay at York Valley and consider other options there? Should we look at Eves Valley and at stage 3 there? Or should we look at other more mechanical methodologies of treating and or recycling waste? And interestingly, over the last short while, quite a lot of information has come back that suggests that we're now getting to the point in New Zealand that some of the other mechanical treatments might be less cost than our current landfill charges. So it's something that we do need to dig into a little bit deeper over the next short while. We know in no particular hurry. One of the reasons I'm looking into it, is that we need to be able to have time to make rational decisions. Now that we've extending the life of York Valley, we actually have time to actually dig into these things and have rational conversations about what the future might hold. So, we're still working with Tasman District Council and Nelson City Council on the joint waste minimisation and management plan. That seems to be going okay, although we're waiting on some information from our SWOP study, so we're a little bit behind in what we should have delivered for that, because we haven't got the information back from our contractor at this stage. In terms of the carryover report, our apologies, we previously indicated we'd have a carryover report for this meeting, but unfortunately this meeting is just too soon in the new financial year for us to have the information available, so we are unable to do that. So we'll have to, that'll now be in the September board meeting. In terms of resourcing, my update is that I haven't been able to make any real progress on that due to other commitments. So we are where we are. So any questions in regard to the report?
Thank you. I'll just go to Andrew Bishop and see if there was anything he wanted to add on the finances.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not really. I think it's well covered in the report. I guess my only comment in addition would be, two comments. One is June has continued the similar trend in income, but with the year-end valuation of the airspace, the post-closure costs, we have incurred some significant money in dealing with the gas issue at Eves Valley, and that will hit then. So, but there's plenty of trying to think of the right word, fat in the system this year to cope with that. We will, it's not going to dramatically change it, but it could be in itself a reasonably big number.
Yep.
But in the context of the whole finances, it's not that. Not an issue.
Not material.
Yeah. Well, maybe material, but
Okay.
not an issue, not a problem.
Right.
Given the volumes and the additional income from volumes and the savings in the ETS for the last 18 months.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Andrew. I'll now go for any questions at all. Mel.
Thank you, Jadine. Through to Nathan, I'll just work my way through. I might just ask a couple and then step back and let someone else come in, and I might come again. But I'm looking at page 11 of your report there on 4.6, where you talk about you've reduced the risk around vehicle doors. And I was just wondering, you go on to say at the end of 4.6 that there still needs to be managed the double door containers. And I'm just wondering, are you optimistic that you'll come up with a solution to handling those?
Through the chair, I am optimistic. I think that there are two ways, and we're currently still working at, essentially we've taken responsibility still on our shoulders at the present time for trying to find a way of doing that, without, safely. In the event that we can't find a way on our shoulders as the business unit, well, we still have the ability to go back to our supplier or client organisation and say, I'm sorry, these doors are no longer acceptable at the landfill. So we can get to the position where we will have a safe activity. We're still working in the first piece is, can we manage it at the site rather than requiring the supplier to not bring those bins to our facility. The part of the difficulty we have is that those bins are principally related to the Buller district waste, and so they're not related to the Nelson City or Tasman district or any of the other parties in the region.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have a contract with the Buller district until 2024 for this acceptance of the waste. And so we've been trying to identify a way of doing that, because what it seems at the present time, it seems a little bit unfair for me if I was to say, I'm sorry, you can't bring your bins to us anymore, but they've only got 2 years of life left, and we may choose not to accept the waste after that. Now, I don't know whether we would make that decision or not. That's a decision that we're allowed to make. But at the present time, that's one of the reasons I'm taking that on my shoulders to try and find a safe way for us to do it, rather than just go, no, these bins are no longer acceptable. We may get to that position, however.
Good, thank you. And through you, Jadine, you mentioned odour before, and you say there's a routine odour assessments. I'm curious to know, how often what's routine? How often do you do that? Because this one slipped through with the neighbour, hasn't it?
Well, what we've had a comment, it wasn't actually a complaint. The compliance personnel at the Nelson City Council rang us emailed me to say that they'd had this notification, but they didn't consider it a breach of our resource consent. But then if they get a whole heap more, they might dig into it further, which makes sense to me. In terms of routine from our perspective, I do it at least once a week. But it's not only me, it's the contractor on site also does it. So what we basically do is we drive into the closest points that we can get to the landfill in all the residential locations, which is essentially the end of the subdivision. On the cul-de-sacs, and I personally get out of the car, I walk around, sniff the air and see if I can smell anything that is landfill related, which I have not actually been able to detect a landfill in any of my visits yet, but I also spend a bit of time there and listen and see if I can hear the landfill, and to date I can't hear the landfill either, and so I also try to understand what other potential adverse effects we might have on our neighbours essentially. And so I'm reasonably comfortable at the present time that we are not, from an odour perspective, there's not a lot of frequency of that odour. There may, if there is an odour, it's an infrequent thing. I don't believe it's intense because, again, I haven't been able to do it, but maybe there is there is. So overall, I don't think we've got a significant issue at the present time.
Fine. I can ask another one if you allow me. Looking at page 16 of your report, Nathan, 12.2, you talk about the new litter fence. And then you go on to say, however, further improvements are ongoing. Well, I'm just curious here again to know, for you to tell us what those ongoing further improvements are. I know just a little bit further on you say additional catch fences will be required, but prior to that you say improvements are ongoing. Well, what are these improvements that are ongoing?
Okay, so in terms of litter management at the landfill, we essentially there's sort of reactive management. Litter gets blown around, you go and pick it up. Then there's sort of defensive stuff. We put fences around the landfill to catch it when it's blown out. And so and our plan is to have 2 layers of fencing, one close into the landfill surface, so where we're dumping, and a second one at the boundary of the site to, if there's anything blowing that gets past that first one, hopefully it get caught in those second one. And then there's a third layer of defence, which is actually a proactive stuff. So what we are doing is we put wind bunds in. These big soil bunds that are 4 or 5 metres tall, but in between where the wind is coming from and where we're dumping. And on the top of those bunds, we actually have what's called a diffuser. And what we're trying to do is shape the wind up and over the top of the facility so that we're not actually picking up rubbish in the first place and having that going. So at the present time, we have the wind bunds themselves, the big dirt piles, but we've still got the diffuser system to go on the top. And that's a mobile thing. So each time we shift the landfill forward, we shift the bund forward and put the diffuser back on. And we obviously have the fences which we move forward with the system and those ones. But what we don't have at the moment is the catch fence around the boundary. And the reason we don't have that is obviously we don't have a boundary fully established yet with the airspace digging. And when we finish the benches for the airspace digging, we'll then go through and put that fence out at the boundary. So those are the improvements we're making. That being said, we are getting close to being best practice already. No, I don't know of many other landfills in New Zealand that are using wind deflection methodologies at the present time. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got a follow-up question on chat to the odour issue, and it was just a query whether it was obvious that the odour actually came from the landfill, because it can feel like an obvious, well, it must come from the landfill. But so, for example, as a resident who lives in the nearby area, I know, we'll hear noises, for example, and you have to go, well, is that from the construction behind us? Is that from the quarry over in front of us, etc., etc.? So it doesn't always come from the obvious sources. So do we know if it did come from the landfill?
The answer is I don't know that. I can't be sure of that. I didn't smell it myself. We have had this notification that it was a landfill odour. I don't know. We have had our contractors going and investigating. One of the things we will be doing is looking at cutting a walking track up our boundary on the western side of our legal boundary, so that we can actually get up that boundary, because at the present time we can't actually get close to the location that the complaint came from. So we want to be able to actually get close to where the complaint came from and actually be able to walk and actually do tests at that point. And we've also gone and inspected the sewer system in Wesley Place down at the bottom below the landfill, and our contractor believes that there is a possibility of some odour coming from some of those manholes in Wesley Place. In the past, the landfill has installed ducting in the ground to a number of the manholes, between the landfill and Wesley Place, but there is no ducting for those Wesley Place ones. There's been discussion about putting sealed lids on those manholes instead of lids that have little holes in them. So the contractor was concerned that there may have been a possibility, there's a few qualifiers in my statement there, that there could have been an odour from those manhole lids. I'm not convinced. Every time I've been there, I have not smelled a single thing from those manhole lids, but that's fine.
Lovely, thank you.
Through the chair, can I also just say that I haven't been up to the landfill in a wee while, and I did a safe work observation with Nathan about I'm losing track, about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And for somebody who hasn't been up, sometimes you can argue that if you go up to the landfill often, you get immune to the smells. So I hadn't been up there in a long time, and the safe work observation included me, because I know that there's always an issue with odor. And the first time I smelt anything was actually when I was actually right inside the landfill, and I had my window open from the Caltex garage. So I made an attempt to try and see, and I could detect nothing. Granted, it was one particular day at a moment in time, but I couldn't detect anything.
Lovely. Thank you for that. I'll go to you now, Stuart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just if I perhaps start by following on from Mel asking about the doors on the truck or trailer. Nathan, is for you, Madam Chair. Nathan, is that a local-based contractor that's doing the haulage?
Through the chair, I don't believe so. I think they're based out of Westport. So it's something that we, I mean, as I say, we've taken on our shoulders at the present time to try and deal with it. It may get to the point we can't. It would be related to either Tasman, Buller District Council, or to the contractor themselves, in terms of the costs associated with bracing that. One of the problems is that I think that the Buller District loading of their bins is different to the way we do it. We have in Nelson, we have compactor bins where the waste is pushed in with the hydraulic, whereas they down there, I believe, have top loading bins, and these bins are essentially converted containers that have a double opening door at the back of them.
Right.
So it's a different style of waste infrastructure there, that if we go and put in place something that says you can't bring these in, it has a significant adverse effect potentially on how they manage waste in their region, which is one of the reasons I'm trying to figure out another way rather than just say, no, you can't bring these here anymore.
Right. Have you had some discussions with the transport company or going?
Yes. Can I pass that over to Brad to talk about that?
Thanks, Nathan. Through the chair, yeah, Councillor Bryant, we are having some conversations with Buller District Council at the moment. They're very early in our conversations. We finally got hold of the right person down there. But again, they do contract their services out to an external contractor. We know who the external contractor is. However, we don't want to step on anybody's toes by going directly to the contractor at this stage.
Okay, thank you. So then my next question in relation to your report, Nathan, just in relation to the sale to Pioneer Energy, we talked about that going through in August. Is there any plan to come back to the committee before that sale goes through with the final details, or is that an in-committee item? Or?
Well, that would be in committee, but B, no, there isn't. The board has approved as long as we meet those criteria, it's approved, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. And then just moving on to the joint waste minimisation study, that's obviously looks like it's going to cover the election period now. Is there a plan to progress that rather any quicker so that in the new term the councils will be able to further that work?
I'd like to pass it over to Tasman District Council David Stevenson to ask that if I could.
Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, councillors. Our plan is we're working through a waste assessment, which is what we need to do before taking a plan for review to the council. So we're working with Nelson and a consultant on that. Our target at this stage is to take that waste assessment to the councils in September, I believe the date is, before the election. So we're doing technical work at the moment, and then the plan would be to decide membership for the review of the plan either late this calendar year or early next year, and then take a draft plan for discussion or sort of start discussions with a working party or whatever group's chosen in early next calendar year.
Thank you, David. Just a follow-up question though. So is there any commitments time-wise to the external parties that we have to have that done by?
In terms of our statutory commitment for a 6-year review, we're well ahead of that review, but we've decided to move earlier just because of the changes that we're seeing in legislation and also our contracting arrangements. So our target at this stage is to have a new plan adopted by end of September 2023.
Thank you, David. So, Madam Chair, if I come back, I just have one final question for Andrew, just around the finances around the Eves Valley closure. Have we any idea of the likely cost of what he was talking about that being?
Through the chair, I'm not really in a position to answer that. I just noticed that some bills going through in the last month for the gas, which were not provided for in the post-closure costs, so that they will flow through when we do the year-end calculation of that liability. Does that answer your question? But it was a couple of 100,000. Yeah, it will come up in the September meeting.
Okay. And at least that gives an indication of the order of the sum, perhaps. So we're still going to be well ahead of where we predicted the budget to be at year end.
Yeah, the post-closure cost provision has got a lot of factors in it. The most significant one is the movement in the interest rates that have doubled over the last year. So that's going to have a significant impact, which will reduce the current value of the liability. So we've got additional airspace, which will increase the length of time, which will increase the costs provided in Eves, but decrease them in York. So there's a lot of moving factors in there, and so I wouldn't like to make a prediction on it at the moment.
Okay, but that will come to the September meeting as well?
Absolutely. It will be there'll be annual accounts come to the September meeting, as if we've got staff.
Through this year, Andrew, do you believe that we'll still remain in surplus given those
Yes.
The answer is yes to that, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all for now.
Thanks, Stuart. Trindy.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions there, I guess they're questions. So, Nathan, first of all, thank you for your great report. I just note, when we talk about these carbon credits that Pioneer Engineering have, what is the impact if we aren't able to strike a deal with them?
Through the chair, we will be able to strike a deal. The difference is whether or not we choose to buy their share of the credits they hold. So essentially they hold, I think, I don't know the specific number, somewhere around about 10,000 carbon credits in that order. And 50% of those credits are, through the deal that we've done with Pioneer historically, are owned by Nelson Tasman Regional Landfill Business Unit. And as a result, when we want to resolve that, we can either get the money for those shares if we were to sell them to the market, or we can choose to say, well, actually, we're going to buy their half of them and only pay half the amount and get 10,000 shares for half the amount, essentially, if we wanted to. So all I'm trying to do as part of this activity is to clear up that outstanding element of our relationship with Pioneer, so that when we go forward, it's not sitting there and gets forgotten in the future for some reason. I don't think to me it's a little bit irrelevant whether we buy them or don't. I just we've always got a need for carbon credits, and therefore if we choose to buy them, but that is up to the board to decide at some later date.
Thank you. And if I may, through you, Chair, and this probably isn't a question aimed at you, Nathan, but more so from our team, is your carryover report isn't ready due to the timing. I'm just wondering, when we reschedule meetings going forward, whatever the council looks like, whoever sits, keeps these chairs warm, do we need to relook at the meeting schedule so that actually those reports can be delivered when we say they're going to be?
So through the chair, it was partly my problem. I mean, I said, generally this meeting would generally be held in August on a normal year, but this particular year we've got the elections and we're having 4 meetings before the elections. I didn't check the date of the meeting when we wrote that. I just, in my mind, made the assumption we were still having our meeting in August. And if the meeting is in August, I've got time to get the data together. If it's not, even in a normal year, it wouldn't be an issue. It's just the fact that we've got the election this year. So, and the meeting's been brought forward because of that. So,
all right, thank you. Sorry, I'd missed that. Thank you. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Trindy. I've just got a couple of questions myself. Firstly, just in relation to the Section 8, the deed of agreement in terms of reference review. So you said it should be able to come to our 9th of September meeting. Does that then enable enough time for it to get on the TDC and NCC agendas for 22 September?
Through the chair, I'd have to divert to Nelson City Council and Tasman District Council's offices to confirm that. I can certainly prepare information for them. We can probably do that in advance and just tweak it, depending on what the board resolve at the time. But I'd need the TDC and NCC offices to confirm that actually can be achieved.
So through the chair, I do need to look at the calendar, but provided we can get the report to this committee, then that will just feed on into the council meeting. And I'm short of actually checking it, which I don't have anything with me, I can't foresee a problem at this moment in time because one will just lead on to the other.
Thank you.
I just need to check the dates.
Okay, thank you. Richard.
Yeah, if this RLBU's meeting on the 9th of September and council meetings on the 22nd, that's 12 days. So there should be enough time to do a referral report straight through. So it shouldn't be a problem for Tasman.
Thank you. Okay, so maybe you'll just liaise together to make sure that, Richard and Alec, you're getting what you need within the required timeframes. That'll be great. My next question is to do with 9.4, just the buttress work, and it mentions that the upper buttress was not able to be completed prior to the wet weather setting in. Just any impact on costs anticipated or within our...
Through the chair, there will be some small impact. We are... having the contractors on site when there's wet weather obviously incurs wet weather delays. We end up paying for the machines to sit there doing nothing. I haven't got the full analysis yet, and I'm still trying to dig into the details of whether or not we should continue to work over winter, and or not. And the intent is the crux of that decision is: are we making more airspace than the cost of using those machines? And if we are, then it still makes sense to do that. And if we aren't, we're not. And so at the present time, one of the things we've been really pushing hard to do is to maximise the amount of material but taken out of the back of the landfill so that we can maximise the amount of material or the space that we can use at the back of the landfill. And if we stop now and restart in September, there's a possibility we will lose a significant amount of landfill space, because every day we obviously fill up forward. And if we then overfill an area, we can no longer dig in that area. So we're in this position, and I don't know the specific answer to that. I would like to think that we will capture the airspace, as much airspace as we possibly can. But I'm not going to spend more money than it's going to cost me in airspace. That's just doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Thank you. So next question, and I think you just about answered it earlier. It was just, it said the swap report was expected mid-July. I know it is only just probably literally mid-July, and you hadn't received it yet. Any update on at least timing for receipt of that?
poking the contractor doing it regularly, as is Brad, and so we're hoping to get that. It's for our own purposes. It's not as important as it is for the fact that the JWMP is reliant on some of that for its activities. So we're trying to get that. We still haven't got it, and I don't have a specific date for it. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. And then just in regards to NTRLBU resourcing, and excuse any irony in this question, but I guess I'm asking, what's needed to to progress this? Do you need more resources to progress it? Yes, there's a whole irony in that. But, are there, for example, HR contracting companies or something that, is there some support you can get to help that to progress?
Through the chair, I think that's largely sitting on me. I have written a report. It has gone to the Nelson City Council. There have been some comments back. During this last period, I went away on some annual leave, and I also got COVID, which interfered with the amount of time I had to work. So that's principally the reason. There is, I need to work with the general manager or the group manager of Nelson City Council to figure out the next step for getting that over the line, essentially. So that's one piece that I probably can get support on, just getting from where we are now to an actual plan, an actual hiring process. So,
okay, great. Thank you. And please don't take my comments as a criticism at all, because I think our team, which is a small team, does an incredible amount of job for the landfill, but I also am highly aware that you're also in our SBU. That also takes up a significant amount of time. So, hence why it was just if you needed support. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? Mel?
Thank you, Judine. I've just found another one here, and it's to do with the treatment of copper chrome arsenate contaminated sawdust. And you say there, Nathan, that you're going to aim to identify whether a small system is available to treat this sawdust. Do you know whether a small system is available? Are there bigger systems? Is there not a small ones that are out in the market?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm still working on that. However, we've refined some of the information we have. We are looking into stuff that's coming into the landfill, and we do have a significant amount of this chrome copper arsenate contaminated sawdust. We also get some, the data suggests we also get some uncontaminated sawdust, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. But anyway, so the technology options, there's a bunch of technology options around them. Like most of these mechanical technologies, scale reduces the cost per unit processed. So, there's a limit to what we can potentially do economically. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It might mean that we, the board, make an assessment that we actually want to put a small unit, even though it's going to cost slightly more, as a demonstration that it can be done, because that might show where we might choose to go in the future, or it might demonstrate that responsible waste disposal is not necessarily landfilling in the future. Those are all considerations that will come back to the board at some point. I don't know exactly when I'll be in a position to do that. I think that it'll be important for us, or for the board, to actually sit down and actually think about the future in the next year, or the next 2 years, and say, what does landfilling look like? And in my opinion, landfilling and the landfill business unit doesn't actually mean that we have to have a landfill. It means that we have to responsibly dispose of waste for our region. Ultimately, that's really what the landfill business unit's role is. And it might be that we have a landfill and we have another facility or something different that does that activity. I'm not going to take that particular word landfill and that's the only thing we can possibly do. But what we have to do is responsibly dispose waste in our region.
Really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, if there's no further questions.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, sorry, Andrew.
Kia ora. Thank you, through the chair. Nathan, thank you very much for your report. It was very informative. I like the forward thinking in it, and what methodology we do to deal with our waste. With the sawdust, with it having that copper with it, does that become a hail material?
Through the chair, I don't think it's hail. Hail is specific. Essentially, the site on which that has been produced would be a hail site. This would be it's currently not considered a hazardous material either. It's just a material that we get. The problem we have is if you burn it in a furnace, it spits out contaminants into the atmosphere. If you put it in the ground, it contaminates the ground. It would then be a hail ground.
Right.
There isn't an easy answer for people in the community to dispose of it at this present time. I know that our problems here in the region are probably reasonably significant compared to nationally. I mean, because we obviously have a bunch of timber and sawmilling type activities that we undertake in the region. So there's quite a lot of it compared to some other places. But then if you look at Marlborough as an example, they have, tens of millions of CCA treated posts in the vineyards, which obviously, when they break or something happens, that they should be disposed. And at the present time, a lot of that stuff probably sits on someone's farm or their vineyard because it's expensive to send it to the landfill. But, so there is this, I think, an ongoing risk. David might be able to talk in more detail about some of those issues from a waste minimisation or a waste behavioural perspective. My perception is that we as a landfill, if we can reasonably take organic or other materials and do something else with it and not use up airspace and to make some energy, then we should look at that. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will do it if it's not economically or other, viable from a rational perspective. But I think it's incumbent on us to take a look at it and see whether it actually does make sense. And that's where I am at the moment. Yeah.
Cara, Nathan, that's really excellent to hear that. Batteries and the lithium batteries causing fires within there. What size are those batteries when you're looking at, we're getting all these second-hand electric vehicles coming through, and I do like to see looking at other methodology also in dealing with that waste we're going to have on our doorstep very soon. So those batteries that have caused fires within it, what sort of size batteries are they?
In my recollection, and I'm not there personally on the site, but my recollection is that generally they are smaller, cell phone, those sorts of smaller batteries. I do know that there was one occasion where one bigger battery was punctured, and then the guys went and dug that out and found a dozen or more batteries in one package that were all packaged together. One of them had broken and gone open, but there were actually a dozen of them in that one package. They were bigger, like computer batteries or something like that. So, computer batteries are obviously more significant, but we don't get, and I wouldn't expect us to get electric car batteries. I would expect them to be more responsibly recycled. I would expect. I can't guarantee. Don't worry. Yeah, and we never know what we're going to receive at the landfill. Yeah.
David's just going to add to your answer as well, Nathan.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Just to let you know that the government has moved a product stewardship scheme for large batteries, and they're working through that. So I'd expect over the next 18 months, 2 years, that there'll be a take-back scheme for all of those large batteries. So I wouldn't expect that would necessarily be an issue for the business unit.
Through the chair, I would like to say that I think that the battery diversion scheme is actually a bit of a success story for the region at the present time. That's my own personal opinion. We've worked with Tasman District Council and Nelson City Council to implement a scheme. We have seen a reduction in the number of fire, ignition events at the landfill. That was our goal from that scheme. We clearly haven't got to zero, and I don't think we'll ever get to zero. But the goal was to try and reduce the risk profile by reducing those ignition events. We have worked with Nelson City and Tasman District to keep that scheme going in its current form, and we'll pay for the costs of disposal of those batteries over the next year, and we'll reevaluate over the next year whether or not we carry on in that same form into the future. But I think, it is a bit of a success story. And I'd like to thank the Nelson City Council and Tasman District Council for their efforts on it. And in particular, the really great communication that has gone out that's made it really clear in the community that actually can be done and done well. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll just see if we've got any further questions at all. Okay, excellent. We will go to the resolutions, which are on, or just the resolution, which is on page 9. Do I have someone happy to move that? It's moved Trindy, seconded by Mel. Okay, all those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will now go into committee. Do I have someone who's happy to move the resolution to exclude the public on page 4?
I'll move
I'll
that.
move.
I'll second.
Okay, that's moved by Stuart, seconded by Mel. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. And then just could everyone on the screen, so the 4 of you, could you just thumbs up or something that you can't be overseen or overheard?
I can be overseen.
Okay, we're probably not going to have anything on the screen that's problematic. So I'm going to be okay with that. Thank you, Stuart. And we'll just wait for a second while we stop the live streaming.